All right, it is just about 6 o'clock on this beautiful July 21st, 2026 in Merriam, Kansas. We're here for the Downtown Steering Committee Working Session 2 of 4. There we go.
I think we got people here. Let's go ahead and call the meeting to order because I know everyone's trying to get Eric to do that. I want to begin by thanking you for serving on this committee and coming together. As you know, it's a pretty diverse committee where we have downtown business people.
No one cares about
them. People, businessmen, people, residents. So it's important that there is no right or wrong answers for and everybody's opinion is just as important as the person sitting next to you. So please speak up, please share with the rest of the group what you think. But each of you bring your own unique perspective about Merriam, what you know about Merriam, and what you'd like to see as far as what Merriam does going forward. I mean, this is really, as far as I'm concerned anyway, one of the most important decisions that Merriam's had to make in 75 years. I mean, becoming a city was pretty important, right? And it was the downtown business people that came forward and actually formed the city of Merriam. But what we're going forward is generational to come, going to affect just you and the people currently living today, but many generations on down the road. That's what we have to occur. I guess that's what's talking a little bit about this in reference. We're going to validate what we found out. We've had a lot of pop-up sessions itself where the community has had a chance to voice their opinions. That's going to continue throughout the rest of the summer. And we're going to test, at least through a pressure test, what you know about Merriam. I know all of you have your own unique perspective and know a lot about Merriam. That's why you just like to be on this committee. We're going to raise concerns and disagreements and perspectives about the data that we can't capture. But there's a lot of stuff goes on with this. I really appreciate Shirley and her team for trying to coordinate this and get us all thinking about things we should be thinking about. And of course, the important part is building ownership. So come to consensus and have to carry out a plan to where hopefully we can take to the council. Now, as you've been told in the beginning, the council is going to have to ultimately make the decision. But what you're doing today is vital to us being able as a council and governing body to come together and move Merriam forward and figure out what we're going to do. We're going to do anything or do something or what happens. What you're doing here today is very important. So I don't know that I have a whole lot of what I've missed, Chief, but I'm just going to turn this over and let's get started this evening and we'll go from there.
Thank you. Hi everyone, welcome back. I'm Sheila Shockey with Shockey Consulting, and I'm going to help guide you through this process tonight. We're going to accomplish a few things tonight. We're going to give you a community engagement update, and Scott Frame is going to do that with Shockey. We have in Caitlin Garden, we've been doing a lot of engagement and had really good turnout at a variety of different events. Also, we're going to try to take some of that community engagement and come up with some guiding principles for the plan, which it was in your agenda packet. And then we're going to go through the flood control approaches that potentially are on the table. And tonight, we're not going to make a decision about which flood control project to do or not do, or whether to do one at all. But we are going to go through and kind of identify some of the pros and cons that we need to think about, and then information we need to probably gather before we meet again in August. Also, with me tonight is Bill Ebel. He's on our project team as well. And I'm going to have you go around and just introduce yourself really quickly again, and we'll get started after that. So go right ahead.
Scott,
Bob Johnson, Ari Johnson Company.
Anna Perry with Merriam. Karen Crane, Tourism and Economic Development for the City of Merriam.
Sean Zotke, Wolfie Studio.
Dan Molina on the Planning Commission.
Ruben Kosmeyer, City Council Ward 4.
Shelley Klikowski, Suburban Run Husband.
Rick Williams, Downtown Marine Partnership President, and what in regards to Williams Company in the Downtown Marine Campus. Mixed Valley Planning Committee.
Sean McConnell, Planning Commissioner, Public Art Committee Chair.
Shorty Gomez, I'm on the public art committee.
Bob Biden, Mayor.
Whitney Abbott, City Council, Ward 2.
Jacob Leahy, City Council Ward 1.
Fred Camp, longtime resident.
Todd Boyer, regular guy.
Staff too. Caitlin Garrett, Assistant City Administrator. Andrea Morgan, Planner.
Brian Dyer, your local director.
Chris Engel, City Administrator.
Okay, and thank you, folks in the audience for attending also. After the meeting's over, if you have additional questions or anything, we're gonna stick around a little bit afterwards to answer questions. We're gonna go through the materials and allow this time for the steering committee to kind of talk together a little bit. And we have someone joining us. Can you give us your name and introduce yourself?
Ed Campbell, business owner.
All right, thank you. Okay, so tonight, as the mayor said, the city council is ultimately going to make a decision about this. But really what we need you to do is to weigh in on the engagement today. What does that tell us? Think about the different options. Help us think through the pros and cons from your perspective, but also from the overall community's perspective. And then we hope that we can come to some consensus around some recommendations, not at this meeting, but at some future meetings. Okay, so we have 2 left. We went through kind of existing conditions at the last session, and we talked about kind of some of the different directions or pathways that we could take to achieve a different vision for, a long-range vision for downtown Merriam. Tonight, we are really gonna think about the guiding principles. What are some things that we could put in place that will help the planning team really come back to you with some different alternatives, some different ideas for the community's future in the downtown. And then we're gonna talk about the trade-offs associated with no flood control or flood control. As I said to the staff, this is probably one of the more difficult downtowns to really plan because you have a lot of different challenges. And we've been sending out to you some weekly reading and polls, and we'll share some of that information as well. We're gonna continue that through the next 2 meetings so that we can kind of, as we develop information, we can share that with you and we don't hold it all until the very end. And then what we'll be doing in August 18th is the framework plan review, and then we'll talk about implementation steps and how we can move through adoption through the engagement process. So really 2 decisions tonight, not necessarily decisions, but kind of discussion items. Confirming the guiding principles, and those can evolve as we go, but having a pretty good set of them would help us come back to you in August with some really more concrete type of plans. And then flood control, yes or no, it's a pretty difficult and expensive decision, so we're gonna kind of go through that. We're not gonna make a decision tonight, again, we're gonna talk about that more in August. So with that, I'm gonna get Scout Frame to come up and she can talk about what we've heard so far for community engagement.
So a lot of this would have been in your agenda packet when you were reading for this. just some highlights. We had, stakeholder roundtables, which I know some of you attended. That was, roundtable interviews where we, discussed visioning and future of Merriam. We did downtown business owners, residents, institutional knowledge, a number of, different groups. We have 2 online tools to date. A third is to come in August. So, the first tool was the vision and guiding principles. We have about 200 responses, and the one ongoing right now is issues of potential strategies, which will close at the end of the month. We have 4 of our 8 community pop-up events to date, so we have 4 more to look forward to. There, we're also gathering feedback, meeting people where they are. And then we have 4,000 survey packets going out this month, which will be statistically valid surveys, which will help us guide Merriam's future. Some early input, some of the top things we saw consistently off of all forms of engagement would be safety and flood readiness, which we're obviously going to dive into a lot tonight. Treating Turkey Creek as an asset, a walkable, connected downtown, everyday life. A lot of cafes, retail shops were brought up by downtown residents, and an identity that's distinctly Merriam, making sure Merriam isn't a copy and paste. It is its own distinct. It has its historical aspects. It has a lot that makes it uniquely Merriam.
I got a question real quick.
Oh yeah.
On, the online tool number 2, are you seeing a lot of engagement so far in that?
We are. We're still pushing it out, but yeah,
Okay,
it's
just so I can continue to encourage, neighbors around.
100%. Yeah, it's still open for another 10 days, I believe.
Okay.
So yeah, please continue to push it.
I've got a question. How many residents are there in downtown area?
You
You
know,
mentioned
there-
residents.
I mean, people that live in, that own property or live in Merriam downtown.
Well, residents, which would mean they live there, yes, I assume.
Yeah, you don't have, a large residential population in your downtown. I mean, it's supposed to be primarily business.
Okay.
Yeah, so, but we are asking business owners, people who own property in the
Well,
downtown.
I know who you're asking.
And residents
I'm just,
throughout the
I'm
community.
pointing out
Oh, yeah,
that the
yeah.
word was residents was used, and I want to make sure that we understand that this is not an existing population.
right,
In the
Correct.
absolutely.
It's across
There-
all of
there are
Merriam.
people
outside of that district
Yeah,
that
outside.
don't
Yeah.
Yeah,
actually,
exactly.
I mean, stay.
So the, TTC survey, the survey that's statistically valid, it will go to, business owners in the community all over, including downtown, and, a random sample of those, and to the, residents, and we'll have a random sample, statistically valid results from that. Yep.
Can I ask, so, they were talking about stakeholder, interviews, and so, my head stakeholders are business and property owners in the district
Yeah.
are the stakeholders. What has that been, what has that been like? What, you did interviews, I think I read some little different groups.
Yes.
Explain that to us.
So you can, Mike, maybe you can kind of tell the breakdown of the different.
Yeah, so there was 8 different stakeholder groups, and it was, roughly 7 to 10 in each group, and we would, meet up with them. It would be a roundtable environment, so we were leading the interview and asking questions, but it was a roundtable feedback, so they were answering questions about the visioning and, looking to the future of Merriam. There was downtown business owners, that was a group, neighborhoods and residents, was a group. We met with the Downtown Merriam Partnership, technical and infrastructure, market, reality group. We also met with schools, and nonprofits, as well as the drainage district, yeah. So-
Okay, so specifically, what about the business owners and the property owners?
Yeah, so they were included in the stakeholder interviews, yeah,
Okay.
invited to it, yeah.
Okay.
And Rick, you participated in that.
And so just as far as looking ahead, what's next and how this all feeds into the plan, we have the statistically valid survey coming out. The online tool, will be coming out or opening on August 3rd. We have a second public workshop, and that will be on the 1st of September, and then 4 more pop-ups to attend. Tonight's input, as Sheila mentioned earlier, this is gonna be about the principles we've marked, setting the flood pros and cons, and our activity that's to come. And then this will help us prep for the 3rd steering committee meeting, which is next month. And it helps, decide what decision criteria and what direction we want to head. And then the framework plan and confirmed preferred flood direction will be at the 3rd steering committee meeting. And then this is just a nice graphic of how we hear from the community. These steering committee meetings are meant to follow public input, so you guys are feeding off of what the public input is, and you guys will be building off of that. So we have our stakeholder interviews, our pop-ups, which will still go to the through October, our first 2 online, and then our 3rd one starting in August, and then our 2nd public workshop, and then we have the $63 survey and our city council presentation, which will be the last step in the process.
Okay, all right. Any other questions about engagement? We had written a kind of summary of that in the packet. And if there are other ideas for how to engage the community and or other stakeholders or downtown business owners or property owners, we'd be happy to get some feedback on that and try to adjust, make that happen. So let me know if you can, okay, yeah. Okay, all right. So tonight we're going to talk about the guiding principles. And in your packet of information that was sent out ahead of time, we had a little bit of a questionnaire. If you didn't receive that or have time to deal with it, I'm going to have you go to the agenda packet that you have with you, or pull out the one you've already done, and take a few minutes individually to go through that and answer the questions. And what we're asking you to do is to go through the statements. And those statements have come from either best practices, which we reviewed kind of with you at the last meeting, which was what happens in terms of a successful downtown. What do you need to make a variety of different uses work together? The other place that we got that was from our community engagement and stakeholder engagement. So different principles that we would apply to the plan based on what we've heard from the community and various stakeholders. And then the third is really some ideas that we can discuss, and maybe you want to try to include, or we need to get more information from it. So I'm going to have you take a few minutes right now. If you haven't already filled it out, looks like some of you have. I love that people brought homework and fill that out. Yes.
Explain in practice that this is what is.
That's what we're talking
practice
about
right now.
No, what we're saying is in practice, that means, what does this mean? What does that statement mean in
Okay.
practice?
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And so I'm gonna give you a few minutes to just run through that really quickly and maybe check your homework. And then, we're gonna go through them each area and come up with, what we need to, adjust or where we have agreement. Okay? You should have some music or something. If you need a pen, I brought some pens, or actually Scott did. If you need a pen, got one. I guess you need a pen, you're digital.
I'm done.
Okay, we're gonna go ahead and get started. If you don't have them all complete, we can kind of catch up as we talk through them. The 7 themes that we have categorized are safety and flood readiness, Turkey Creek stormwater and open space, a walkable connected downtown, a working downtown economy, taxpayer return on investment, identity and design, and how we get there, so implementation. So let's start with the first one, which is safety and flood readiness. There were 3 items under that. The first one was safety comes before growth. Don't put people where flooding can trap them. This is kind of the concept of no residential development in the floodplain area until there's access in and out of the downtown. And then Merriam should be elevated out of the floodplain. And so, thoughts on the first one? Do we have any folks that strongly agree or agree? Can you raise your hand? Yeah. Okay.
However,
Okay, sure.
yeah, however, I did, in my, being the very first one that you read out of the entire thing, my brain as an engineer immediately went to, well, there needs to be more language for that. So I chose revise, even though it's a heat, only because I felt like the language needed to be.
Revise?
Yeah, only strengthened or broadened, but I don't know the specific language I meant. It was just my gut intuition out of the gate on that. Safety is pretty important, so how you word those types of safety measures seem pretty critical.
I struggle with it from the standpoint that should we be encouraging expanded use in the floodplain? And that was my struggle with it, was
Right.
why are we talking about growing in the active floodplain area?
Right, when we have a mitigated
Yeah.
former, before it's like part before the horse, or whatever.
Okay. So maybe once we make the decision or the recommendation on whether we get the area out of the floodplain, that will not necessarily be the issue. Yeah. Somebody have?
I just, to echo Jacob's point, I think it's irresponsible to try and incentivize either development, investment in an area that's inherently at risk.
There's a reason it's number 1.
Yeah, I think that was the struggle, was like, we don't want growth, we don't want people to be safe, right? But we think you need 2 or 4 separate.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Well,
Okay. And that kind of fits with the next one, which is the idea of no residential development until the floodplain, getting people in and out is addressed. So pretty much agreement on that idea?
Just on this one, I think this is especially important for Turkey Creek specifically because this watershed is so flashy.
Yeah.
You know, with a larger stream, you're gonna have more warnings, but here you don't necessarily have warnings.
Gotcha. Okay. Any, one that was, disagree on any of the first 3 or, need more information?
Third item, I just felt it was TBD. Again, it comes back to what you said. I think it's the cart before the horse.
Okay.
You know,
And
I couldn't answer because I'm like.
If Kessler stays, does Merriam Drive really have to be out of the floodplain?
Yeah, I think there's a bigger conversation.
Because it's so flashy, it's not gonna be flooded for an extended period of time, it's gonna recede fairly quick, so. If Merriam Drive can stay in the floodplain, but Kessler still needs an egress, it's kind of a, depends on how it's engineered.
So assuming these are guiding principles, I just felt like it needed to be revised. I don't have the revised solution, but it feels like we don't know the answer to that question.
Okay, yeah, so we need to think through that a little bit more.
Yeah, if it's gonna be like flood and safety readiness thing that guides council decisions, should we move forward with the recommendation? Assuming that,
So
it feels like we're committing to some kind of giant thing,
Right.
you know?
So it sounds like what I'm hearing is that, being 1, we need to kind of have more discussion, bring it back in August, think about how that plays out with the overall strategy for either no flood control or flood.
And where we go with the later
One of
conversation.
these
comes
things.
here.
Okay.
Right, it should establish a desired outcome, right, like not prematurely dictate an engineering project.
Great.
Well,
Any thoughts? Yeah, Rick.
I'm thinking, well, okay, I kind of agree with everyone there on that. What the question is, we have some other things that need to be answered. For example, you've got cost, which is gonna be a major factor. Because there's a big difference between $83 million and pretty much covered by federal money. So, unless there's some place we can get $83 million, I mean, you know, I don't happen to have that in my pocket.
Okay, me neither. Yeah.
So,
So we'll hold that till, that'll be our conversation with the pros and cons of each. But yeah, so if we need to wait, is kind of what you're saying on
yeah,
the
I
first
mean,
ones.
until you've got a plausible, or at least addressable, I mean,
Yeah, gotcha. We're all aligned. Yeah,
It's all-
everybody
it's
sounds
all
like they're
up in the
kind of in
air.
alignment on that. We need to hold that, theme one until we, talk further about the different flood control options, costs, constraints, challenges, impacts. Okay, so let's go to 2, Turkey Creek, stormwater and open space. So, the idea here is, Turkey Creek is seen as an asset, not as a hazard. And so we really got, both in our community engagement, people see it as a hazard, people see it as a potential amenity. Reduce the amount of pollutants flowing into the creek, and so having a lot of, automobiles and, sediment, development can cause more runoff. Nature can provide cleaner water and beauty, so the idea of reclaiming some of the creek and figuring out if we can make it more of a restored native plantings and kind of making it more of an enhanced amenity. And then open space or green space does a double duty. It can be a gathering place on days that it's dry, but stormwater storage when needed. Thoughts on these? Any of those stick out that you either have a strong feeling about? I'm gonna start, yeah.
Just clarification on number 7, you mean storage as in something for retention pond?
Yeah, or basically just the water can go onto it because it would still be like floodplain. Yeah, for flood.
Not concrete, it would be.
Yeah, it would be.
Ground where the water would sink.
like on the other side of the creek.
Like permeable surface.
Right.
Yeah, something that can, so, yeah.
So I'm looking back at, the email that we got on July 1st, and it talked about, the creek carrying oils, grease, fuel, metals, antifreeze, and solvents. So one thing I can tell you that most, maybe not everyone, but most of the automotive businesses down there, we pay per service, it's recycling service. Pick up oil, use gas.
So have kind of a best practice
solvents,
there to.
all of that stuff. We pay a recycling company to come pick those up and recycle them. So anything that's going into the creek is runoff from the street.
Yeah.
You know, there may be people, bad actors that are dumping stuff in the creek. But there's a lot of other nasty stuff in that creek too. I mean, sometimes you can literally smell it.
Yeah. So, when you say you have a recycling company, so do you store that oil, in ground, or how does that?
No, we store them in barrels.
In barrels, above ground?
Yes, yes. So every automotive repair shop down there,
Okay.
we store them in barrels. There's a recycling company that comes and picks up those barrels and recycles. They use oil, paint thinner, antifreeze, all of that stuff is recycled. So the stuff that ends up in the creek is not from those businesses. I mean, nobody goes out there and dumps their stuff.
Oh, yeah, I get you. Yeah.
So it's
illegal.
runoff,
Yeah.
it's runoff from the
Yeah,
road.
It's illegal, yeah.
And, I mean, there may be somebody doing that, but
Yeah.
not any of the legit
Right.
businesses that have been there a long time.
Yeah.
So it's runoff, but there are also other pollutants in the creek besides that.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
I mean, you can smell it, you literally stand and smell.
So is it
Nasty
possible
stuff.
then, do you think, to kind of make the creek an asset if it has, a lot of runoff and that sort of thing that's not treated?
Well, if, potentially, but is there good access? I mean, I don't know, any really very many places where there's an access to the creek. Like, you mean if somebody wanted to go down and fish, God forbid, but.
Or just have access to it?
Yeah, I don't know if there are that many places that the creek is accessible.
Gotcha.
So,
Yeah, currently, yeah.
Yeah,
But I mean, that's the point. Number 5 doesn't say business owners are dumping into the creek, we need to stop them. It's saying we should reduce pollutants from flowing into the creek, which I think is a good.
yes, absolutely. I'm just saying that when I read the email, I'm like, wait a minute, this is, you know, that's not the only pollutant, these are not the only pollutants in that creek. I don't know what else there is.
Sure, just even dirt,
Whatever,
filter
yes,
dirt, that
yes.
kind of thing, including sanitary.
Yes,
As a
absolutely.
non-mechanic resident, I thought my first intuition on that was, only in flood events. So, you know, yeah, you might have your barrels and things, but in a flood event, what if those things get carried into the creek? I wasn't thinking about it from a day-to-day basis, but I get the point. I was thinking about it like, an event happens and y'all will bring a lot of stuff in.
Potentially,
Yeah.
but, I mean, they're in, that'd have to be a hell of a flood.
Yeah.
Because they're in it's in a building, in a barrel, they're not stored outside, it's not legal to store them outside.
So what do we think about this? Yeah, the asset.
Well, I mean, we have to acknowledge that most of the pollutants come from upstream.
Right.
So we are really limiting ourselves to the area we're considering.
Yeah,
So
that too.
obviously, if we move forward, we would like to reduce whatever pollutants there are in the area here. We could,
Well, and I think we also
Sewers.
have a responsibility to people who are downstream from us in that sense as well.
Yeah.
You know, can't just blame everything on upstream. It's designed to be a runoff creek.
Yeah, so I'm hearing that, the idea is good to basically try to make the water as, you know, clean as possible. What about the idea of it being an asset?
we're not gonna build a treatment plant or anything
Right,
like that.
yeah.
We're just trying to be good stewards, minimize whatever pollutant that we might create in this process.
Okay.
And what is the process of doing that? I mean, whatever comes from upstream, how do we deal with that?
Some of the ways you can do that is to provide some, some native plantings, different things like that. To
Okay.
hold the sediment,
Yeah.
so that you basically aren't getting it running in with the pollutants.
Yeah. Okay.
So, thoughts on the first one? Can we envision Turkey Creek as an asset in the future? Yeah.
I think number 4 could just use a little bit more nuance, specifically
Okay,
around
number 4.
creek frontage. Like, are we talking about all of the creek's frontage, majority, or just like key points of connection for pedestrians?
Okay.
And where is there an access? Because it's just not all that. So
I mean, that's what we're trying to decide, is access desirable? So that's what we're trying to.
yes, but
It sounds
it's
like-
also a physical limitation of access to.
There's a lot of excessive waterfall parks.
So what I'm hearing is
Yeah.
that it's desirable, but we may have to.
Yes.
See somewhat.
Yeah, I don't realize there's specifically any access to it.
Or think of it from this perspective, you're walking down the trail, you wanna see the creek, it's pretty, it's a nice environment, that's an amenity, an
Yes,
asset.
absolutely.
Versus a flood wall,
Yeah.
where you know, there's
Yes.
a creek on the other side, but you can't see anything.
Yes.
That's what I take from this.
Yeah.
Physical access as opposed to physical
Right,
access.
Yeah, so.
Vibe access.
I'm hearing that that would be a desired goal, is to basically, I'm trying to make it an asset and not a liability.
Yes.
There's a way to do it, well, if you can walk on the other side of the creek, which there's a trailway over there, then you could see the creek and you could see Mother Nature and all of those wonderful things. And that can also add as a storage of sorts in the event of a flood. It's like a floodplain, just like they always used to have around rivers because they didn't have levees.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'll just, I feel like number 4 is the most important of all of these things. Because, I mean, there are a lot of cool downtowns in the Midwest, Kansas, in this area, that there's not many that have feature, friendly markets, just capitalize on what's in your plan. It's a differentiator that we can't afford to lose.
Yeah, if I just add on, I think it's mostly considered an asset, and I'm not, when you say not just a hazard, and I can see it being a hazard when we got flooding, but outside of that, I don't consider, a hazard. It has wide access to the community, we have trails on each side, and, it's just, in my opinion, my neighbors and stuff, they think it's a nice place.
Yeah. It sounds like we want to continue that.
And do we know what the, I'm sure it's varying depths, but what the depth of the creek is? Like, could it be a hazard as in somebody gets too
Oh.
close to the creek and falls in and drowns?
Yeah, I don't think that's what this is referring to, it's more, it's flashing, it's a flashing creek, like a flood.
Okay.
I would just say that on number 7, can we be a little bit more consistent how we talk about space, because green space and open space are two different things.
Okay.
And have different.
What would you,
I would
say
just,
for
I would just use open space.
open space?
It captures both green and vacant space.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, so what I'm hearing here is that there's, we like this idea, we can afford it, and it works out, and we can engineer it, we would like to do that as much as we can in locations. Okay. Okay, so this was probably the number one thing that we heard, and as somebody just said, you already have a lot of connections, through your trail system, you're working on that. But the idea that downtown would be walkable and reads as one place, connected across barriers, and so right now it's kind of split, into some disconnected halves where kind of the roadways and different uses kind of make it feel like it's disconnected a little bit. And then, parking and circulation, we heard a lot about parking. No downtown is without concerns about parking usually, so fragmented parking, kind of how people park, people parking on public and private, a little bit fragmented, so the idea of trying to get that access managed, coordination of parking a little bit better, as it develops in the future. Yeah.
What's like the specific numbers? Not like, oh, but like what is driving those specific numbers? Because that's what it strikes me as like, that's highly specific for a guiding principle.
Oh,
10-minute walk, 400-foot walk.
Oh, that's a best practice. That is a
Okay.
best practice. So basically, most successful downtowns, people are willing to walk 400 feet per, about, between where they park and where they go to a retail shop.
Interesting. Okay, thank you.
I really struggle with the fact that what's in our packet is not what's up on the screen.
Oh, it's not.
Because I struggle with the language that's in our packet, but that's not what's represented on the screen.
Okay, so downtown is walkable, we did, it's not, I didn't put every single thing on here, so.
Yeah, because
Go ahead,
I struggle with 15 minutes city because there are a lot of that fake actors who
Yeah.
want to jump on that. And I think if you just cross that out and just use neighborhood at the doorstep, attract businesses, reachable and a short walk or bike ride, like that captures what we want. I think there are too many people who latch on to 15-minute city who honestly aren't smart enough to understand what it means.
Okay, do you wanna break them into, what's in your packet, go one by one, we can do that. I just.
No, it's just,
basically had it
I understand this is summarized, but like, the nuance of what was in our packet isn't captured up there, that's what I'm
Okay.
back and forth.
Okay, well, let's go through what's in the packet then. So basically, the idea there, the first one is, the size and how far people are willing to walk or the cross, how far that. A best practice is about, a 10 or 15-minute walk, basically, is what people are willing to do. So that would be kind of the size of it, and your downtown kind of is that size right now in terms of the planning area, a little bit smaller than that. In parks, a typical best practice is, you need to be about 10 minutes from your house to a park. The downtown, if you had housing somewhere in downtown, you'd be about 10 minutes from Warner, you'd be less than 10 minutes from Warner Park, no matter where you, were. Let's see, the next one is a 15-minute neighborhood. Basically what that means is you try to have, a successful downtown would have all the things that you would need in one area that you could walk 15 minutes and get to it. And then the next one is parking is about 400 feet. That's another best practice. It kind of, all of these things put together make it a walkable downtown. And then the last one is, I can't read it. It's developed to feel like one place. Yeah. So those are kind of the concepts that are included, in this item.
I felt the essence of this particular D3 was extremely important. I think the details are where the challenges are, but I think the other thing that I came to is, again, my gut was set it aside, even though my instinct was key, because it's again the cart before the horse. I can't really make decisions about any of these until I know, are we mitigating floods? Which one of the methods are we using? That's how I determine whether I can make it connected across barriers and, 400-foot walks, et cetera, et cetera. So the essence of this, I think, is important. But I struggle with some of the details like you did, like, my brain was like, wait a minute.
I don't mind, yeah, I don't mind the detail, I think it just, the more detailed we are, the more it seems to lock into a particular solution. And I think the idea that a walkable downtown is very important. And I think, having parks nearby and having, parking relatively adjacent, I think those are all important things.
Yeah.
But I think, just like we're doing now, the more, at least what I'm doing, the more detail you put in, the easier it is to maintain.
Yeah, and so the actual guiding principle is the darker text. And then these are kind of in practice, this is kind of what we're talking about.
So are we essentially saying we're leaving some room open for interpretation?
Yeah, so basically we're saying a downtown is walkable and breathes as one place is the guiding principle. In practice, I'm giving you this is kind of what that would look like and what that means. And actually, you could accomplish that with or without a flood control project, a lot of those items. More difficult, maybe if you don't have a flood control project.
And all of them would be intended more successful business. I'm sure bring more spending to those businesses so those
It would,
businesses thrive.
yes,
I mean, that's
yeah.
ultimately the goal.
Yeah, these are kind of best practices. Last meeting, we talked about what a successful, vibrant downtown that was mixed for a vibrant economy. These are some of the things that are practiced that you would have to put in place to make it walk.
And Jacob, if I'm hearing you right, you're saying that by quantifying these values, we're boxing ourselves in to kind of like leaving no room for interpretation?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so really what I'm asking for your commitment on yes or no, or should we revise it as downtown is walkable and reads as one place?
Yeah, no, yes, I think that, but like, there's so much more here than we were doing.
Just kind of giving you a sense of what that means, yeah. Okay. Other thoughts? We like these in general, the ones that are in the dark type, the higher level concepts? Yes, ma'am.
So this is assuming that all of downtown is completely re-imaged, redeveloped, turned into something different.
Not necessarily, you could accomplish that still.
Pardon?
I feel as though it assumes nothing. I feel like these are like, I think of it as just goals in
Well,
general.
okay, it's a question.
Yeah, so
Is
my
it-
my
is
thought
that the-
here is that you could accomplish a downtown that's walkable and reads as one place, even if you don't do a flood control project. Basically, you have, acreage that's out of the floodplain, you have other acreage here, you can do other projects than flood control to make it a walkable downtown.
I understand, but what I'm saying is, what is there now is
Oh,
not.
it's not, no.
Is not.
Yeah, we're doing
Doesn't-
what we want it to be,
Good
not,
enough.
yes, not what it is now.
Okay,
Right.
because that makes all the difference in the world. So this is the assumption that all of that will change. To
Basically.
more dining, more shops, more things like that.
Actually, what it just means is downtown is more walkable, regardless of what is downtown. That's the question.
Okay. So the walkable part it really catches me because been down there and the school buses barrel down the road. Yeah, who would want to walk?
Yeah.
So a lot of things would have to change. Inside that district as well as outside.
Yeah, Merriam Drive.
So but that's the reality, that is what that area is. And so, yeah, well, Rick,
Some of it will be.
could you get run over? That's all, okay, so yeah, that's the premise here, is that we're assuming this is the entire downtown, the face of downtown is going to change
You could change.
dramatically from what it is.
You could, not necessarily dramatically, you could change Merriam Drive and add, more, you could slow the speed down, you could basically, add, another roadway connecting east to west. maybe something more to the south, and accomplish that without changing a lot of the uses, but the bus probably wouldn't be barreling down Merriam Drive, as you said, if, you had it and your goal was walkable.
Okay,
For sure.
and, well, it shouldn't be now, but they do. So, the shops and the restaurants and everything that would be there would not necessarily require their own parking like the businesses that are there now.
Yeah, I think what
And
we're saying here is that right now, the parking probably, what we're hearing from stakeholders in the community is parking is somewhat challenging now. And so how do you manage that better, regardless of whether it changes over time or not?
Yeah, all right.
Okay, we'll go to the next one. A working downtown economy. So, this is not how it is right now in the downtown. These would all be very different things. A living, working downtown around the clock, the right housing in the right place, a locally grounded business mix, a downtown for everyday life, and the city leads on, would do some kind of project on its own land, respect existing businesses and property owners, and, as it changes, as the different uses change, and then build to demand, not speculation. So basically, don't go out and try to, build before, the demand is there. Thoughts on these? These are kind of more radical than the last one, so what do you think?
Yeah, I think 13 is incredibly important. We hear a lot locally about planned developments like the Plaza or Prairie Fire or whatever, and it's, a giant conglomeration of, chain stores and other, chain restaurants, that sort of thing, and just because people talk about how expensive the rents are, and so I think it's important to make sure that whatever happens with Merriam downtown, whether it's something or nothing, we need to make sure that, our local businesses can be able to still exist in Merriam downtown.
Or attract more.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Create
Yeah,
makerspace.
and Scout said that was one of the top things we've heard from the
Mhm.
community is kind of have a Merriam feel, look, something different than what else you have in the region. Yeah, Rick?
Well, I just, makerspaces and things like that.
Yeah.
I would encourage small developments and could even have a second story so the people who work there could live there, but not get into multi-story type stuff, which is gonna make traffic into a major nightmare, which it already is for the most part anyway, at times of the day. And you get a lot of people, and you're gonna have even bigger problems with traffic.
Other thoughts on some of these up here?
That's again, 15, I think, the community center site doesn't need to be on that, it just can be with the city leads on its own demand.
Okay, and that's just in practice.
Because the city does own a lot of land down there.
We're just at the top.
The community center may not be the best one to start with,
Okay.
so I think if you just left it off, it will pick it up.
I agree. So other thoughts on these? Do we like them or not like them?
I like them, I strongly agree with Daniel's statement in terms of 13. Do 15 and 13 kind of work together? I mean,
You know
what I'm saying? Yeah, I mean, yeah,
Are you talking about the 15 up here and 13 on that
that's
side?
correct.
Okay, how do you see them working together?
How do I put that into words? I mean, if you're wanting to incentivize and favor a range of locally owned businesses and independent businesses, if you're going through a developer to do that, that's not gonna happen. So the only way to do that, from my layman's perspective, is the city owns the property, the city finds ways to create incentives to have that occur.
Okay.
Do something like iron districts.
Okay,
Where like you purposely built something for small businesses.
Right.
And outside of the city owns
And
them,
then
not
sell-
be incentivized.
Sell them as opposed to becoming landlords, yeah.
Or you can just incentivize the development and target 13, whether that the city continues to have.
So that's how I see 13 and 15 kind of
Work
playing
together. Yeah, I think several of these kind of work together, building the downtown for everyday life, if you have a good local mix, if you have housing, rooftops are very important to have nearby, so that you increase the demand, and as a retail shop owner, I can tell you, foot traffic is the number one reason that your shop stays open. Anybody else have anything on these? Okay.
Real quick,
Yeah.
the last one, I start with it as a goal, because obviously you don't wanna outbuild demand, but you also want to build to encourage. And you can't constantly be chasing demand.
Okay.
You have to lead it on some level.
Is there
So the fact that there's just like either too demand or pure speculation, I feel like there's no room in between to target the.
Okay, so maybe add to that a little bit about, creating demand.
Yeah.
There's a way to incentivize that.
Creating
When I
space
built,
for.
when I built Casey Strip, when I rebuilt and redid the Casey Strange building, which is now apparently on the tossing thing somewhere. The city, I was able to negotiate with, well, first I went uptown and found out what I could buy per square foot, up in the area in KC. And then I came back and the city had bought out 2 buildings that were White House Gallery. And we put in a bid to locate it, but it was the bid that gave us the chance to have enough in money left over to actually do something with it. And I built one of the best buildings down there, so.
So kind of encouraged by quality, doing a project that's more quality, to encourage more demand.
Yeah, and basically, if you got land, and you can, just the land itself can be an incentive.
Yeah.
Or a pricing of the land, for somebody who's got imagination and funding to do something.
Great. Anything else on the working downtown economy? Yes.
So downtown Merriam has always been kind of, every business down there has been sort of a destination business. It's not been an entertainment district or a come hang out downtown, it's never been that. It's always been, you know, you have a destination. You're going to a repair shop, you're going to the violin shop, you're going to, so there's gonna have to be, if that's what it's gonna turn into, it's gonna have to be a lot of, I don't know, transition, I guess, for people who have lived here, you know, in this area for our entire lives. Marion Drive's been what it's been. You go to Marion Drive, you go to Marion Feed Store. You go to Marion Drive to get your car fixed. You go to Marion Drive, you know, you need a piece of, you need a line, whatever. So, it's gonna take a big transformation to turn it into something that it's never been.
Yeah.
And, I don't know, but I guess one of my biggest concerns besides the flooding is also the traffic. It's,
So managing the traffic.
it's, yeah, cause when I-35 backs up and there's a train and, yeah, I mean, sometimes even way down at the south end of Merriam Drive, I can't get out of my parking lot.
Yeah.
Because everybody jumps off I-35 to avoid the wreck on I-35 and, you know, the train on, you know.
So that's another barrier.
That's gonna be a major concern with changing.
Let's go to this one, real quick. Theme of 5, taxpayer return on investment. So basically, every dollar, public dollar draws private investment. That's kind of what I think some of you kind of talked about incentivizing. And then the other one was public flood investment earns a public return. So there would be some, economic activity, as a result of the public, flood, investment. Thoughts on these two?
Just cost. Until you know the costs
Yeah.
and the actual ability to get the money without having to sell out the whole thing and have it be what's been up on the hill going on over here, then you're not gonna be able to.
So how important is it then to basically, if you do, if the taxpayers decide to do public, flood improvements, that basically the return, happens over a period of a decade or 2 decades, or basically.
There's some well-defined, prices that are in some of those things that ranging from 88 million bucks to.
Right, we're about to get off of that.
Why does it appears to me that the one sort of ROI that's missing in this is one that's not quantitative,
Okay.
that's qualitative.
What is that?
And that would be just the experiential quality, the, quality of life.
Experiences.
So kind of thinking of the downtown as just another facility or basically a community asset.
Being able to go walk doesn't show up on the spreadsheet as like a return on investment.
Yeah.
That's the thing that I think is, I mean, having that, like, not overspending, I think is very important. I think that's coming up later, but, you know, return on investment is not the tax base will end up paying back every dollar with interest in 10 years. Like, that's not what, that can't be the only metric.
There's a socioeconomic return on investment. That is two people. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, it's not quantifiable, maybe.
Okay, so maybe modify, the bottom one to talk about that kind of qualitative, socioeconomic impact of that public investment.
In your round 2 event that's going on online right now, are these 2 topics in some way asked of residents?
The questions are more like right now, the public, meeting questions, which were where would you invest money? Not what the return is, but probably
Right,
the
but I mean,
next
it's
one.
still similar in nature.
Yeah,
in terms of-
so, are you basically, if you got this much money, how would you allocate it? But the next, online questionnaire would kind of talk more about this, if that's something you want to.
I think where I'm going with that is more of a residential, or residents of Merriam, 11,000 of them, are they committed to that investment? I mean, that's what I as, if someone represents people in a certain way,
Yeah.
I wanna make sure that I'm not making decisions just because I want it, I wanna make decisions because I see a majority of the people in this community want it.
So we'll be asking.
And that's a pretty big one.
Yeah, we'll be asking that question on the next online survey, and more specifically about the return, and we'll add the qualifier about kind of the qualitative benefits and the socioeconomic
Okay.
from this input today, but also the ETC statistically valid survey will, delve into that a little
Okay.
bit. And we'll bring that back to you in August.
So there's also the investment from people who are not residents.
Sure.
Yeah,
That are
so-
property owners or business owners.
Yeah.
That are, like, for example, right now, you own property within the Merriam Drainage District, paying taxes. The residents at large do not.
Right.
So,
That's not
I mean,
true.
there's,
There are a lot of residents who pay during district taxes.
that are outside of the drainage district?
No, but there,
Yeah, that's what I said.
there are residents that pay, not
Yeah,
just the.
Neighborhoods,
No,
neighborhoods pay.
I said,
Okay.
everybody that owns property within the drainage district pays the drainage district taxes.
Sorry, I thought you meant just business owners.
No,
That
no,
was all I
no.
was- Okay.
Yeah.
All
Including-
property owners.
Including some Shawnees too.
Yes, some Shawnees.
Yeah, I think that's right. So then, well, I could go off on, where do we go with that? Does that continue, does that
Yeah.
change, whatever? I'm just saying, there's investment also by
Could be drainage.
non-residents.
Taxpayers, yeah.
And
And if it was.
I can expand on that by saying, what Shelley's saying too is that there is also the visitor component.
Yes,
That comes on.
Yes,
That
that's
will
it.
come in, we do
Yeah,
have the highest
absolutely.
pull factor in the state by far.
Yeah.
And,
That's right.
so it's not just the residential component that is spending money within their own community, but people that are visiting here
Yep.
for different purposes, that's a return on investment as well,
Right.
from outside dollars.
Yeah.
Okay. And pull factor means we basically, you pull more sales tax in than you, that goes out.
Yeah, like,
Yeah.
very, very, very,
Very much.
my customers come from Merriam, and they're outside. So,
Okay. Anything else on this one? Okay, so identity and design, so we've already kind of talked about the first one, having it be kind of authentic and not so much like you went to another development development somewhere else in Johnson County or elsewhere in the region, but basically it would be just physically Merriam, be authentic to Merriam, preserve what people already value, such as the trail and kind of that small town character is what we're hearing. Make sure that, public art, gateways, people can figure out where they're going because of good signage, that's wayfinding, are budgeted as part of the plan elements, and then a place to gather and family friendly. Thoughts on these?
Sure, we need right now, extras.
So a lot of times when you're doing a public project, those are kind of extra things. Those are things that maybe you wouldn't build into the project, like, good wayfinding, so that you can find your parking garage, if you had a parking garage, or, you know, if you, you maybe wouldn't put public art into a project, if you bring it in and drive or something like that. Does that speak to you like that, or are you reading it differently?
I guess I don't know. Can I?
Maybe it doesn't have to be not extras,
Do you mean like
or included?
those are the first things to get cut, the budget?
Yeah, like basically, that's what I'm saying, yeah. Is there another way we should write that?
They are not extras.
They are not extras, yeah.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I'm saying, they are not
We're worried
extras,
about they're not.
yeah. Does that
Yes.
make more sense? Okay.
I think some of these things can exist together. I think we can have a unique identity. Merriam has always had a very unique identity, but I think from where I sit and what I do for a living, number 23 is paramount, in a successful downtown. And I find myself, when I'm traveling now, paying attention to that more and more and more. I'm the world's worst at dropping a pin where I park, so I just forget, I'm so excited to get where I'm going. And to be honest with you, I couldn't tell you how far 400 feet is to park from where, I'm just happy to get a parking place, okay? And so I'll walk wherever. I was in Bentonville this weekend, beautiful downtown, engaging placemaking, and art is built in, and I was just in awe of that district and area. And I wish we all could have a lot of money, but we don't, and so, but I think these things do often become the add-ons if there's money, and I think that's a big failure, to do it that way. I think we need to make sure people know where to go, what's there, finding their parking, beautiful art along the way, those kinds of amenities, besides just what shops are here and what event is here, yeah, all of those things.
Anything else, folks, think on this one?
I'd kind of like to elaborate what Karen says a little bit in preference to, I too agree that we, try to keep Merriam, distinct some of the things that we currently have. But I revised mine to say something like, if my neighbor has something I think is really cool over there, I don't mind copying it.
You'll
So-
steal from your neighbor?
Yeah, steal from your neighbors is something that we really need to bring to our community. But, so I wasn't just like, well, because they got it, we don't want it. I thought that would be fun.
Okay. Something that's working elsewhere, maybe work here, but make it more distinct for what you're looking at.
We don't want to lose our identity, we want to keep a lot of the same stuff. But there would be something out there that we think's cool that we would bring us.
All right, let's go to this one, how to get there. So, what we've heard, through stakeholder interviews and, through community engagement is, kind of improving through partnership. Like, this is a big endeavor, we really have to work as partners to make this, happen. And then keep the, process open, protect businesses through construction so that, they can maintain their business and stay in business. As long as possible. Thoughts on these? Okay. All right, so I'm gonna go around because we have people who haven't said anything yet, so if there's something that you might wanna add, I'm gonna start over here. Is there anything that we're missing or any comment that you're making?
No, I think to have, to do something downtown, it's gotta feel intentional. You gotta have the right mix of the residential, the retail component, the restaurant component, the walk or space that creates that, that catalyst for people not only to come, but to stay. So I agree with a lot of those sectors that were, it's gotta be intentional and be, don't be afraid
discussed, at least, I think we have, the flooding. Because I think everybody has a different opinion about waterfront, obviously downhill, we have one flood reply and a second. But how, let's say in the last 20 years, how many substantial events have we had, and how, in the last 50 years have we had? And then on top of that, I don't know, if the city has this information with the Corps of Engineers or Mark or whoever does, because like I said, the creek field is several different jurisdictions. But I think a lot of people, when you value all of this, you value the cost of flood walls and the problems of keeping the same field with flood walls. But, you know, let's say, come in the last, it's 10 or 20, and then let's say from 1975 to today. And the other question is it getting worse, or is it about the same, or is it getting better? And the fourth thing would be, obviously this goes through different cities. What has the Corps or other cities done, mainly upstream from here, to mitigate flood damage? So I think a lot of this is, you're looking at some huge numbers here for walls, and the states are going to suffer because of the wall. So it kind of comes back to what's the feel of the community.
How can you make it, have that feel with the challenge? I'm gonna hold that, answers to those questions, because we're gonna go to that next. So, all great questions you just framed, but we're gonna talk about it in the next session. Okay.
I think, well, regarding the goals, I think there's definitely here to guide you, right? It's not like set in stone of everything detail-wise. For somebody that likes to change things a lot, I don't know if you guys been to Merriam, while there's change, there's how you communicate the change, and it's not just a one-time thing. I think it's like very years. I will have customers that come in there and say, hey, you guys painted, 4 years ago. And so I think that's part of it, is how you continue to reach out and do that ongoing communication to what the business. Maybe, I mean, there's probably people downtown in business that don't know what the hell that's going on. They're not in this committee, or they're not involved.
Right.
And so, how do you guys feel about communication?
Ongoing and intentional communication. Let's go over here, Mitch.
I was thinking about, the existing businesses that, say like in the Merriam Town Center, where Home Depot and all that is, compared to what we're trying to establish or develop in the historical downtown area. So, are we gonna be able to develop, businesses in the historical downtown area that's not going to compete or take away from the existing businesses that are already established? And
It's
also,
complementary.
and also, I'm still not totally, convinced that, flood control is, I'm not saying, I remember the last flood that happened during, but that was how many years ago? Is all our efforts to control flooding of Turkey Creek gonna be worth our money? To, have it to the next level, the next 100-year flood, we spent $1 million to prevent property damage, and the next 100 years is really gonna affect the operation of downtown.
I don't have much to add. I appreciated a lot of the guiding principles. I would be really interested to hear what, like, residents, like, some of the surveys say, because I can think outside of myself and, you know, make decisions based on a lot of other groups believe about Merriam as well. Yeah.
Okay, great. some more feedback from you, but we will include that, some of these and get more feedback from the community on it, as we do on it, sure. Okay, so now we're gonna come back to flooding really quickly. So I'm gonna go through this will be super quick, because you guys have these in your packet. We're gonna do an exercise where we break it into groups. And again, Brian will stay here afterwards, I will, I'm not an engineer, but as we both said, we stayed at a Holiday Inn Express, or catch up about it. Pretend to be engineers to help you figure out what this all means, but in general, what we're trying to figure out is what is the right approach, and, we basically have two scenarios. So, when I say floodplain, there's a lot to that, there's a lot of different, aspects to that. Sometimes it's in the floodway, which has different regulations, sometimes it's in the floodplain. I'm gonna use floodplain in general to simplify and make it simpler for us to understand. Your question was about how often does it flood? That's a great question. What we think of in terms of development and future development and redevelopment is less about how frequently it floods and what the floodplain limits, right? What can be developed in the regulatory floodplain? And so we're gonna hold that question for how frequently it floods until we kind of break into our groups here in a moment, because you can have flooding from an internal stormwater system, which is basically potentially, it doesn't handle the size of a storm that happens, a rainfall event. But what really impacts our development of capabilities has to do with the regulatory floodplain that FEMA has. Does that make sense to everybody? So it's kind of two different things. And so we want to kind of keep our attention on how we are restricted because of those regulations. Approximately 24 acres are in the floodplain in our planning area. 20 acres are out, so 44 acres basically approximately in the original boundary. We've already kind of talked about this, the strictly treatment asset, constraint, and opportunity. It sounds like we're saying it's all three of those things. It's something that could be an opportunity, but it does have a regulatory floodplain mapped on it as well. And we have a lot of different options that we can take. So the two scenarios that we have, scenario one is basically no flood control approach. You can still do some changes in development and maybe potentially change Merriam Drive or some roadway changes downtown. You could make some different connections. You could still do some development, infill development downtown and change it over time. But it's going to be limited because there's only 19.9 acres in the floodplain, and you do currently have the ability to get in and out of the, access-wise, both Kessler Drive and Merriam Drive and Johnson Drive are all in the regulatory floodplain, so technically it's difficult for emergency services to get in and out during a flood event. And so that's kind of one of the main restrictions of the no floodplain option. Sorry. And then the flood control approach, when we do, we have like a whole bunch of different options we're going to talk about tonight, but there's basically kind of two things you can do with stormwater. You can build a wall or a berm and basically keep it on one side and let it develop on the other side. Or you can basically create storage on one side of the land, and then fill or raise up the other out of the floodplain. Does that make sense? That's a simplified way to talk about it, and we're going to get into a lot more detail, but those are basically the ways that we do it. Store water and fill the land to raise it up, or hold water back with some sort of levee or berm system. Again, this was just a little graphic that talked about why you want to have access to the roads. Whether it floods a lot, often, it's still important to be able to get in and out during a flood event. This is a graphic that simplifies all of the different scenarios, basically from no flood control option, that means you already have 19.9 acres, and then adding that 19.9, how many other acres would come out. There are scenarios 2A, 2B, 2C, and 2D. Very simply, they range from about $50 million to $132 million. Now, those seem like they're very specific numbers, and we know exactly how much it's going to cost. Those are very different. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, we've been working on that for almost a decade, maybe, that project. Is that right, Brian?
No.
2000.
Yeah.
2 decades? Okay.
Yeah.
Almost
3 decades.
So when you cost estimate a project, you study it, you do pre-design, you design it, and then you build it. And so that is on the 65%, it's been studied, and it's on 65% design. None of these other options are, they're all kind of swags, they're at the concept level, could be a wide range higher or lower than those, so just kind of keep that in mind. What we did do is try to make sure that we were kind of comparing apples and apples. A little bit difficult. The only two that take Merriam Drive out of the regulatory floodplain are the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and the HNT full fill, which is basically filling and raising 2 feet. The no rise does not take it, Merriam Drive out of the floodplain, and the flood benching does not. We have some graphics that kind of explain what those are. I'll go through those. Again, remember, the Corps of Engineers has a cost share, so they will fund part of it. And the catch there is if Congress funds it. That could happen, it might not happen. So that is a roll of the dice for sure. When that happens is also unknown. The other ones on this side, the $5 to $6 million an acre approximately, that would be more in the local government's control. And potentially, Stormwater Management Advisory Committee, SMAC they call it, is a sales tax in Johnson County that funds major stormwater projects. Cities basically divide those revenues up for major projects. This could get up to 50% match locally, but Merriam Drive would have to come out of the floodplain to get that 50% match. And that would be that was the project they did for the year, or would be probably the only project SMAC would do that year. Is it would take a huge amount of their budget, so likely 50% that's probably pretty unlikely we get that much. So scenario number 1, these are kind of the different acres. You can see again that the floodplain goes along Merriam Drive and covers a good portion of downtown. Scenario number 2, here's the flood control approaches. Storage and fill or levee and walls are the options. So again, I kind of just already talked about this. SMAP, would be a local option to get some funding, but potentially up to 50%. But you'll have to go through a pretty long process to come up with your preliminary design, your study, your preliminary design, and your design before you can go to construction. So the length of time for that could be 7 years, it could be 8 years, around that number. So flood control approach A, this was developed by, the city asked a company called BHC Roads to look at flood benching, and basically it shows in green here what is reclaimed developable land, and then the blue is what's still in the regulatory floodplain coast project. This is the statistics on that. Gives the least cost per acre, or the least cost of the options that are non-federally funded. But it takes the least amount of acres, new acres are reclaimed to the least amount. This is how flood benching works. So basically, this is your channel right here. And so basically you would just widen the channel here, and it allows the same amount of water to stay within the channel and creates these benches where the flood waters stay during the high water event. Anybody, I don't want to ask, don't ask me how to design that. Does anybody have questions about flood benching? Get the general concept of it? Does that make sense? Okay. So some of the pros and cons are listed here. You're going to go through that in an exercise. Flood control, B, this one is no rise grading. So basically, you would be able to get part of the community, the downtown out of the floodplain by using this for storage. Werner Park and on the other side of the creek as well. So the stats on that. SMAC money and having residential in there, you would likely need to, also improve and raise Merriam Drive.
So I have a question, why did those two say that you'd get up to 50% match if you wouldn't?
So anything that is not federally funded, well, I guess the federally, could you match your, Corps of Engineers, amount with SMAC money?
Yes, we're planning on doing that, but that's only for the core project.
Only for the Corps?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's only core project. It's
Yeah,
any kind of
so
federal
basically
funding.
So there's
you
no
could
SNAP
match.
funding available for anything that would, any solution that wouldn't be the core solution?
No, SMAC, potentially all the projects.
Yeah,
SMAC
this
would be-
was- that was
but the
gonna say.
core, yeah, the federal funds
So
are
it
only for the
doesn't have
core
to be out
project.
of the floodplain, like Merriam
Merriam
Drive?
Drive would have to be designed to be out of floodplain, that's most
In order to
every
get SNAP
regular,
funding.
you have to have a roadway that's out of floodplain. So it costs more, is what we're saying. Does that make sense? I mean, that's just.
Yeah, but those two solutions don't bring Merriam Drive out of the floodplain, so why would?
As concepts right now, so if you wanted to get money.
Oh, you'd have to
for-
further the concept, okay.
Yes, yeah. And you want to this one is full build, so basically it, would take, basically it would just fill, you would basically fill with dirt 2 feet this entire area. And have a levee wall, yep.
So is it safe to say that 2A and 2B's costs are incomplete and they won't be completed in the course of this committee's?
Really all of them except for the Corps of Engineers cost is what I would say less developed. But we will get an update to the Corps of Engineers cost estimate again later on in the year, and it likely will be higher as well, so. So this is kind of what happens, you still would have, levees along here and up here, and then this would just be filled with, dirt. That's the cost. And that's kind of how that would work. So Merriam Drive is the cost estimate, the general cost conceptual estimate had Merriam Drive out of it, the way that the approach is. And we just look at funds. Corps of Engineers, more complex, covers a lot more area, gets a lot more acres out of the floodplain. When we're comparing it, we kept it just in the amount of acres it gets out of the downtown, but you can see that it will get a lot more of what's already in the floodplain out as well. And also that, but that part up there is not. This is the cost. These are more detailed plans. You can see it includes a detention pond and replacement of Johnson Drive Bridge and Merriam Drive, bridge replacement as well. So a lot more complex, a lot more moving parts. This is a blown up detail from downtown. And this explains the difference between a detention basin, which holds water and releases it over time after the storm is over. A flood wall, which is a constructed wall of concrete, and then the levee is a form of a dirt, constructed, berm. These are the pros and cons. Okay. We have a few minutes. What we're gonna do is we are gonna have you, go in, threes. So you three are gonna work on this.
So there's a very important point to me,
Yep.
that we understand that just because it's non-federal money doesn't mean it's not taxpayer money.
It's all
If
taxpayer.
it comes from the federal government, it's still taxpayer money.
Yes.
Whether it's comes out of the Merriam bank account or the federal portion of it.
As is SMAP. Yes. Okay, so what I need you to do is, your group is gonna talk through the pros and cons of this scenario. Add to it any additional pros and cons that you see missing, and mark through any that you think are not important.
Can I ask one clarifying
Oh, yeah.
question? It's not on this one.
Okay, sure.
In the HMDD,
Which one?
the first one.
Okay.
Uh,
The no rise.
Sorry, in the rise one,
Okay.
full bill, is, when you say rise,
Yeah, okay, so, right?
It would basically, not rise, because you're building the entire, you're basically wiping out the building the rest of the house. It is, yeah, it's a big difference, yeah, yeah, very There you go. Pros and cons, real quick, and then we're gonna have you move, not the billboard, but you were gonna move, okay? I'm gonna give you a few minutes to look at each one. Okay. The pros are green, cons are green. That's about 78%.
Outstanding.
There goes walls, block off stuff, you're not gonna see this, we're
So you might want to use that.
Pretty sure you know the city has already.
Yeah, no, but it's more the building trust itself, it's like what the church.
All this is our school. Well,
Chief, if I wanted to walk around and see the conversations going on personally, are you gonna prevent that?
You gotta record back here.
But I could stand without a camera and listen to the stuff? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, I don't know. What did they tell you?
What I read
I know
is
that you have to record back here, that's all.
okay.
So,
But I could walk up there and.
I don't think they want people in the audience walking up there to this is a work product, so.
Yeah.
And then they'll present their work product up there, and they'll get to here, so they don't want to get them distracted. People walking up behind us. So I would just stick back here like everybody else.
Okay. Makes it really hard to hear the meeting that's going on.
It's not meeting, it's work, so I don't know, and you're not gonna be able to hear everything. 'Cause
Sure,
everybody's
sure.
doing
Just
different things.
one place at a time.
Yeah.
It is this whole session is considered an open meeting, though, right? I mean, you're as familiar with that as I am.
I understand, but there's also, you just can't wander around like council meetings either, you have to stay.
Yeah, but they use amplified audio there so that the public can hear. There's no side discussions like this. So I'm concerned that all these side discussions are not observable by the public, but yet they're part of an open meeting. Does that concern you?
I mean, you're not gonna be able to hear everybody's conversation, because they're all talking.
Sure.
At the same time, so I don't know how you're supposed to hear every conversation.
No, I didn't say every. Just a couple minutes at each group to listen. That's all I'm asking for.
You can do it from back here.
Yeah. Huh. And if I walk up there to listen, are you gonna escort me out? I mean, I think it's important for the public to be able to hear what's going on. And
Well, the camera has to stay back here, that's, this is where the camera's going back. So beyond that.
okay. What do you think, Terry? Does that interfere with the public being able to observe an open meeting? From back here, it's all mixed together. Yeah, that's unfortunate. They passed a governing body rule. Oh yeah, there's lots of people in this room right now that are not on the committee list. Would you escort them back here to the gallery if I gave you the list and you could verify? That's a good question. Let me pull it up.
I see everybody else sitting at the table.
Yeah. I looked at the list just a moment ago. So for example, this is the list. It's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 16, 20 people on it, including governing body and city staff. But there's a name on there that I don't see that belongs to a person in the room right now. That's Bob Johnson, the developer guy up on the left there in the blue shirt. Would you escort him back to the public gallery?
Part of the, he's been set up there, part of the group, I don't.
Well, this is the city's website, right? I mean, it's got the. I just want to be fair. I mean, if the public has to stay back here and he's not on the list.
Apparently, he was invited to go up there and participate in this. It's not my
Yeah, well, he's Bob's second biggest donor in his campaign, but he's not on the list. And that's him up there in blue, and yet he is participating. He's able to observe up close, but I'm not allowed to get up close. You know, I mean, it's not the crime of the century, obviously, but like it is factually. Ask him to come sit back with us.
been up there participating this entire time. Apparently they want them up there. I didn't make the rules for that.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't conjure this list into existence. I just pulled this up on the city website.
Just film from back here.
So I wonder what other names are not on the list, but on the city's website right now, there's a list that does not include Bob Johnson, and yet he's up there. So the city's website is wrong?
There's probably several things you might find wrong, and there's a lot of information on there, sir.
Okay. All right.
He's part of the group. I appreciate the expectation of perfection, and we aim for it, but we sometimes miss the mark. We'll try better.
I hope so.
They're gonna report out, that's when you'll hear what all they talk about.
It definitely help with the and helps our activity.
Can you write that? I don't have that.
Well, years ago, we tried to expand it through
It's just basically, right?
Yeah.
It's free to fill. You don't have to worry about
Very wild. It's been very wild. Yeah, we're thinking about roadside.
It's gonna, you're not gonna see that. It's gonna impact.
Right, got it.
Where's the table at that?
Yeah, that's a little bit concerning
You make happy how you do
Yeah, I've heard that.
Raising the wall. No. All the way down here. All the way down here.
So, and then business, we're gonna have,
Yes.
Well, hopefully they'll get
whoever the engineers are getting it figured out. Hopefully it'll be much compromised today.
You said some people want to do something, some people want to do nothing, right? Decent summary.
Well, yeah, and I mean, it's gotta be one of those things, where the decision we're making, someone's gonna be happy, someone's not gonna be happy.
If that something gets done to specific people's property that don't want it done, why does it matter if everyone wants it done? That property doesn't belong to everyone. Like closing a business, it doesn't belong to you. You know, it doesn't seem to be not to be up to vote, you know?
Like I said, there's facets to this.
Yeah.
It's hard to say. It's not easy, it's not.
You would probably want to very dry.
That's a great channel. Yeah, the channel. Well, I mean, that's how it's part of
Way back.
You guys are.
But like, I mean, $132 million, right? It's got to buy a mile.
They have to get that.
We're going to order.
This one is basically the HMP rise. What we're doing here is everywhere you see water, there's inside the planning.
So this would be, you're getting water picture, you're getting water feature here, but you're lowering all of that. And you're filling all of this area here. That is not. Where does that land? I did, you would have to.
I'm trying to make them look cool.
It was like, it's you know, I can't, I didn't know what that would like. But no, I think, you know, that was. It's like some sort of select issue, so he's different. He's very good. Yeah, he's so just And then if I go north, I go out that way. Yeah, yeah. Back here, I'll be back here. Yeah. This gives us something. You're stuck. Like, it's really anything you guys think on this one to make it even better.
Finish your thoughts, and then I'll have you guys look at the next. Finish up your thoughts, we're gonna go to the next. Yeah, your final thoughts?
Hey, Sheila, Jacob has a lot of numbers questions. Yeah, we have 45 days right now. 45 days.
So what's the
Building is over.
It's a band that's.
It's not even matter. Anything is stored and then you're like, talk about the building.
stone wall? That's the wall. How do you go?
cut out each of those spaces.
No, I'm gonna still out of the video. Funny that. Chris told me that the Merriam City website is full of inaccuracies. Great. Glad we're paying them for that. Steamboat Willie going on over here? What is this?
Eliminate this stuff.
Great development on the left, Johnson on the right.
See how it says here's your original Bay residence? Next to that, you'll see your residence as well. Does this mean putting fill or this original bank confuses me?
I noticed that, you see, it's not, they're just digging out.
Okay.
Typically do your house. That's
Okay.
exactly
So
now.
this is just strange.
Yeah, no, I mean, not to say that stuff that's removed could be used for exactly what you're talking about.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, because it will be, I think it would be
True,
used
but
in one of
even
the other
for us, there's a
scenarios.
concern that that would, affect, if you're digging out and moving it, our biggest goal is not to affect downtown Merriam or destroy buildings.
Yeah, correct.
So
Yeah,
we
so
would want to avoid
if
that.
you're close to, if there's buildings right here, yeah, that would work, but, you know, you don't even necessarily have to do
But
both
if there's a
sides, you
building
can do
right
one
here,
side.
I'm not gonna have to tear it down because I'm moving fill from here to there.
So this is right here, looks like. Looks like, is that supposed to be the, yeah, this.
It's just that line.
Yeah.
So that's that.
I got it. Okay.
Now, it would be on one of these other scenarios where yeah, like this, if you're taking Bill and you're elevating.
That destroys some land.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Well, destroys buildings to gain land. Okay, all right, that answers it. Thanks, gentlemen.
Unless somebody wants to buy it and bring it up for one place in there. If they spend This just gives you
do, like you said, to get like you pay for, right? So you're paying for more acreage, but with the possibility of smack being able to.
You can do as little as possible, it's just
Well, the other question I had, if you're a water has to go somewhere, somebody needs to go.
Finder's guy over here.
No, the free to work, so when this whole county was.
I said Jake's office guys, because our
That's what we
treasurer
fired
is
them.
here. I was like,
It's been a while.
yeah, it was probably like a giant. You didn't
I get that.
Oh, now
You're raising this one.
It's right there. And, I think facing the other side.
They recover.
Yeah, it's just, I'm telling you.
So.
You're good, you're good.
What her call.
Yeah.
It used to be in the town.
Take a screenshot of that, because we give it Caitlin doesn't have a laptop right now.
All of this remains.
Yeah, Freeman's not up there.
All your gains.
A bunch of people are missing.
14.3 acres. Used to be my
Is that guy right there with the shirt?
Yeah, I would feel like that.
This guy's not on the list either.
No, they're gonna be out. Oh, at
Yeah, ask her about it, ask Dean about it. They draw this distinction when they expect the public to sit back and hear everything, but then they let people who aren't part of the committee participate. And I've seen it in our committee too, I've seen spouses and family members sit with the committee and they make me sit in the back of the room. And I'm not there with a megaphone, you know, but I can absolutely hear better if I said it big.
I appreciate your coming up, you were, things, you gotta take pictures of all of those before we leave. Appreciate your discussion.
You happy that the public can hear, Bob?
Okay. Thanks everyone for, your great discussion, interesting to hear different perspectives. You came up with a lot more pros and cons that we haven't even thought of yet, so that was great. Our next meeting is August 18th. August 18th, all right. At that meeting, we'll have some additional public engagement. We'll be asking you some more questions between now and then with our weekly poll, so if you would take those, that would really help us. We'll make the reading short. Hopefully that was good information to kind of prepare you for this discussion tonight. As you can see, there's not one solution that's like, wow, that's the solution, right? What the ones are and what the challenges are very complicated. So appreciate your time and energy in serving on the steering committee. And there is a public workshop that's coming up September 1st. It'd be great if you could attend because you can hear then what people are saying and kind of help them understand better the struggles that you have been working with to try to make some of these recommendations. And anything else before we go? Anybody has? What's that? What schedule do you have? Well, this is our schedule. All right. And we will stick around. Yeah.
I did have just one thing that Wayne mentioned earlier that I think was something that I want to deal with because very often we want to jump to the end.
Yeah.
Or jump to or think that the solutions already apply with the question. just helps explain the incremental potential way in which something unfolds.
Okay, yeah, so how do we implement this,
A
right?
sequence of decisions so that everyone can understand, oh, we're not doing that yet, we gotta do this first, or something along those lines.
That's great. What we are gonna propose is kind of a 3-tier, process that you can kind of compare these with. And so we can send that out, before we meet on August 18th, so you can kind of have that in your head about what are the, implementation steps for each of these options. Good suggestion. Okay.
I think one of the problems was that there wasn't participation between the city staff and whomever at the beginning of the process. And it in the past has been a kind of a deal where it seems like it's being shoved down our throats. And so we need to get open communication from the get-go rather than trying to put it back together after the fact.
Yeah, so I'm sorry that you have felt that way. I hope this tonight helped kind of understand all the options.
This is better than what was before.
Yeah.
But, I mean, with too much stuff being done in what felt like an underhanded way, or we're gonna do this, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do this, and then the steering committee coming in afterwards.
Well, I think really our direction has been from staff and elected officials that this is an open, transparent process, and I hope that you felt that we're doing that. So appreciate your comment.
I think you guys have been.
Well, and I think that's the intent, so we'll stick with that. We'll try to keep that intent out. Appreciate that, Rick. Anything else anybody has? Okay, thanks so much again, and try to stay cool. Appreciate it. Yeah, I don't think
It seems like it's a one easy solution.
It's summertime, we get the minor only, and my name's Dan. I
Thank you, guys.
Sheila, you invited questions, and you invited questions, right?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So I'm looking at the list of committee members here on the city's, pardon me, on the city's website, that's merriam.org.
Yes.
And there's people in here that were not on that list. They were sitting at the committee table.
Okay, who was that?
Well, Bob Johnson for one. I'm sure there was others. I'll have to compare the whole introduction name list, but.
Okay, yeah, I'll have to check that. Maybe the website doesn't have the actual list, but I can get that to you.
Yeah, thank you, I appreciate that. And I was gonna ask, the guy that's from Drake? I think he's already left. He was sitting next to Bob Johnson over there. Who was that guy?
Bob was the second guy, and
Yeah.
Scott is
Scott,
his name.
okay.
Yeah, he's on here.
He's on here? Okay. 'Cause I think I saw him originally. Maybe not. Scott. I don't see him here either.
Okay, it may be that the city doesn't
Yeah.
have everybody up, but that was the official list that was approved that got sent to us on the people we're contacting.
Okay. I would appreciate if that was publicly visible, specifically those two. And the reason is obviously they're developers that stand to benefit enormously from this. So from a public records perspective,
Sure,
the
yeah.
public needs to be able to see, it's not just Billy saying that the developers were here and on video, but
And the reason we want developers to be on this is they gave us some great perspective in terms of the market, what works. Somebody was talking about, realigning Merriam Drive doesn't make sense. You want to have it on, you want to develop it on both sides. So when we do steering committees, we almost always have development community involved in the process.
are they the only two developers?
I
On the
think
committee?
that's correct. They're the
See.
only two that are developed, that agreed to be on.
Oh,
the
he is
committee.
over there.
Yeah.
Scott. Scott from Drake. So yeah, the other interesting thing is those two developers in particular are the only two that donated and the majority donations to the current mayor's campaign. So well, no, I mean, it's filed, it's public record. It's on the county. I'm not making that up.
Okay, I know
So,
you're recording it, but I don't know anything about that.
yeah, no, I know. You're a step or two removed from that. They just hired you to run these meetings. I will say, you do a fantastic job. This was you guys?
Yeah.
Doing the...
Yeah.
Yeah, the production quality is awesome.
Good.
I really appreciate that. I might not like how the city staff are using you, but the production quality is outstanding.
Yeah. No, we're trying to, this is a difficult, it's gonna be interesting what
Yeah.
people come up with, because it's, the options are not cut and dried for sure.
Did you look into the remediation right here that I was talking about?
So I know that the city staff is talking about what's going on there, and they have some answer on that. But
Yeah.
for us, we're working in this planning area right here.
I know.
And we,
The
whether
volume.
it floods or not, the
Yeah.
properties, it's what limits development, is
Yeah.
what our parameter is for obviously you
This-
don't want your property to flood.
Yeah, this
But
is
the
a really-
regulatory floodplain is what we're focused on.
This is a really telling map. I like this because it shows the volume of flood area up here compared to down here. This is pretty
After the project.
But this is after the project.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
And it's not the volume, it's it's where the regulatory floodplain is, and so kind of difference between the two. Where things flood and the regulatory floodplain, two different things. Regulatory floodplain means on rivers and creeks, the FEMA, Federal Emergency Management Agency.
Where they make them buy the
maps.
extra insurance? Is that?
They basically map the risk associated with that creek, not the internal stormwater system. So, we were kind of talking about over here.
Yeah.
Does that flood? That's not what the limits development at all. What limits development is the regulatory floodplain,
Yeah.
and that's the risk on major rivers and creeks.
Yeah.
So basically, this has just been modeled by Johnson County Stormwater Committee
SMAC.
and SMAC, and Stantec did the model. They've updated the technology on how they do the modeling, and so this is the most recent flood risk. Not this one particular, this is Prost, but that's the most recent risk map that basically tells you the 100-year storm, which is really 1% chance in any given year of flooding. And so that is where the regulations come in for the community rating system, which is basically you, as a city, will basically adopt policies to regulate within that floodplain. It doesn't have anything to do with what properties flood directly, it's what the risk is. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so they will, you probably know all this, but you're recording, so I'm telling you the whole story.
Fair enough.
So basically, when when the federal government has your property's inside that floodplain, you are eligible for subsidized federal flood insurance. The problem, because it's so expensive, the problem is.
It's not just eligible, right? It's required.
Not necessarily. You're not required. Your lender may require it. It's not
Okay.
required by
Not
any.
required by the government.
Mm-mm.
Okay.
No, it's not. And what you'll find is not a lot of property owners in floodplains nationwide, unless they have a federally backed mortgage and it's required, they don't have it. It's too expensive. So that's basically basically it. I grew up in a town that was completely in the floodplain. So did Cal. She grew up in a town completely in the floodplain. She's not old enough to ever see the town flood. I swam to my grandma's house
Oh my.
to check on her.
Huh.
So that floodplain risk limits development in that city.
I grew up near Parkville. I remember the 93
Okay,
flood.
well, yeah, you
and that was,
know what
a
you're
lot of
saying.
Parkville was
Yeah.
underwater.
But that's the Missouri River. Even smaller creeks like this are still considered in the regulatory floodplain, where something that's really small, like a 40-acre drainage area, is not. If it's I don't remember if it's 340 or 320, I don't remember the number, but if it's that big of a watershed, which this one goes all the way up to Lenexa, starts up there, it is mapped by FEMA. Makes sense? And so, basically, what we look at as planners is not really where flooding occurs all the time, because that is can be more of an internal drainage system issue. It's really where you cannot develop certain types of uses because of the regulatory floodplain. So, that's my story.
Well, thank you. I appreciate
You're
it.
welcome.
Hopefully this helps some neighbors who couldn't make it here tonight.
Yeah.
There's about 11,000 of them, right? So
Yes.
I get
That's
more
right.
views on this stuff than I could ever imagine in a city this small. So
Awesome.
this helps people stay aware.
87 calls for service.
All right, well, it is 8:16 Central Time, and that concludes the meeting of the Downtown Merriam Steering Committee, which notably omitted every resident of historic downtown and omitted the government body responsible for maintaining whatever it is they build. So, can't say I'm surprised. Love your city. I'll see you around Merriam.